I get asked all the time about tips and tricks when it comes to feeding babies and toddlers and little kids and, nurturing their relationship with food as they grow. Questions like, how do you actually get them to eat, but you don't force them? Do I need to bribe my children to eat? My baby was a great eater and now he just won't even touch his food. So if these are questions that you've asked yourself or that you're curious about as your baby grows, make sure you keep watching. But first, hello and welcome. I am Julie. I hold a doctorate in occupational therapy and I coach moms to go from feeling overwhelmed, maybe nervous, maybe just not knowing what to expect in the stages, to feeling more calm, to parenting with confidence so that you can really enjoy your kids. Because as I always say, childhood does not keep. And ask anybody who's had kids, they will tell you it feels long in the moment, but it goes by in a flash, and it's true. I have 3 kids of my own, including a toddler who has really just started eating and stepping into herself as of late. Quite recently, she's almost 18 months old, so I really understand what it is like to try and get your toddler to eat or just managing your expectations around their food. I also have a weekly podcast and newsletter that I send out, so make sure you check out those links down below so that you don't miss anything. I'm very active on Instagram, so go and say hello to me over there. I would love to have you join the family. Make sure you subscribe and click that like button and check off that notification bell on this video. And with all that said, let's jump in to how to get your toddlers to eat food without the struggle, and it's probably not what you think. All right, so number 1, if you've been around here at all, you know that I love me some good mindset talk. So number 1 is really the mindset, and like everything with parenting, the same with food, your philosophy, how you show up to a situation, your whole framework around how you treat any kind of topic when it comes to parenting is probably going to determine how you feel about it. So if you think it's going to be terrible, there's a big chance it could be terrible. If you are hopeful and you have an open mind, it's probably going to go a lot better for you. So for right now, as I said, I have a young toddler. She's almost 18 months old. And, I want to discuss with you what I determine as successful, because successful for me and successful for you might look very different when it comes to eating. Before we jump into what success looks like when it comes to a meal, I just want to have a caveat for you. There is an expectation, I don't know, it's perpetuated by the media or by maybe past generations who've kind of forgotten what it's like, that babies and toddlers should eat a certain amount. And I want you to remember that when you are small like that, when you're a little baby like that, food is so new. It's not just about nutrition for that baby. They're exploring the textures and the colors. They're not sure what it is. They really need to be educated on like the concept of food. Also, a lot of them are still drinking milk or formula, they're breastfeeding, they're not getting most of their calories from food, or they don't rely solely on food for their calories. They're on a bit of a liquid diet. And so they are not feeling the hunger cues and the pressure in the same way that we are. The other thing to remember, and I like to tell my clients this, is that a baby's stomach is about the size of their fist. Same as how my stomach is about the size of my fist. So that's really, really tiny. And so when you look at your expectations, we really need to dial it back a little bit as to how much food they can even fit in there. All right, so on to success. What is successful at a meal for you and what is it for me? Now, for me, after experiencing 3 kids, and this is the 3rd time I'm going through kind of toddlerhood and introducing food, success for me is my child trying something. Because here's the thing, I'm not going to give her something that I think doesn't taste nice. Nutritious food can still be very, very delicious. And that's what you should be introducing to your children rather than processed junk food and all this kind of stuff. Things that we kind of just perceive as delicious. There are so many wholesome, amazing options for toddlers. I just want her to try it. I just want her to be open-minded and a bit of a risk taker, as we say in our house, to just try something that is unfamiliar for her. To me, that is a successful meal if she takes 1 bite. Because the thing is, if she tries something and it's delicious, she's probably going to go back for more. And even if she does 2 or 3 bites, that is great, and she stops. I trust that her hunger cues are kicking in and she's had enough. I don't want her to overeat, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. But really, my bar for success is pretty low. I also use a reason for her not to try something. If she does not want to eat anything or try anything, I try not to read too much into this. There's a lot that's going on in a toddler brain and mind that we can't always understand, right? So she could be teething and not really want to eat. She could just not feel like eating. She could be full. Remember, we don't really know like what she's feeling inside. She might have had some milk 30 minutes before and is not really that hungry for food. She might be distracted. There might be some little animals outside, or she's watching the birds or something. She might not feel well. Maybe she's like got a bit of a cold, and that affects, or she's a bit congested, and that affects your desire to try things and eat. I really like to honor the fact that she says no, because she's not trying to be manipulative. She genuinely doesn't feel like it right now. And then that's okay. We try again a little bit later. Number 3 is no force feeding. Be honest with me, like when last did force feeding your child work, or forcing them to do anything? When does that ever work, right? So you don't want to create this power struggle, which it can easily turn into, especially as your child gets a little bit older. And then again, we can weaponize food. And I don't need to go into great details about that, but we know it's very superfluous in our culture that eating disorders and things crop up, and some of it can come from power struggles with food in childhood. So we really want to remain open. We want food to be neutral. There are no good or bad foods. There is just food, and there are better for you foods, and like more like foods that make our taste buds dance, right? So it's important that we're not coming across as forcing our children to eat food. Like if you had someone come who really wants you to do something, the natural response is to be like, I'm in the power seat, I'm not gonna do it. And it's the same even with little babies. Number 4, make it fun. Now, it borders on being too distracting when food is too fun. Like I don't promote feeding kids in front of the TV, for example, or like in front of a screen or anything like that, because they absolutely lose the connection with what they are eating. The same for you. If you sit and watch your favorite show and you have a big bag of chips, you look down and the bag of chips is empty. It's kind of the same thing. You lose that mind-body connection. You kind of mistake the full or satiety hormones, and you probably will overeat. Plus your child is just kind of in a zombie mode and is not really understanding or tasting their food. And you're doing that more for you than for them. You're overriding their natural hunger cues just so that you can say, check, they ate their lunch and we can move on. Babies take a long time to eat. They eat very small amounts at a time compared to us. And that's probably how it should be. We rush our food typically in modern culture. And so I think we can learn from them. But in terms of making it fun, something that I have found now is that my little daughter, she does not want to go in a high chair. Sometimes she does, like today she asked me to put her in there, but a lot of the time she doesn't. And my theories around this is that she doesn't want to be confined. They love to walk around eating, which is not my favorite because I want to preserve my couches and things like that, but it's also just like, this is not how we behave. But they do love to walk around. So we're going to talk about that in a second. And I think also she's the only one in a high chair. And when she sees other children in the family, because there's 2 older ones, I think she feels separate, other. It might be different when there's no other babies or kids around and it's just them. But I've found with her, she doesn't want to go in a high chair. Whereas my 5-year-old or almost 5-year-old daughter would love to sit in the high chair and can still fit, and we take off the tray and she's really happy to sit there. So don't worry, they will go in the high chair eventually. No, I'm just kidding. She doesn't need to be in a high chair and she wants to go in one. But the baby doesn't want to be in a high chair. So we make it fun by giving her different options. Sometimes she sits on my lap at the table. That's really fun. I find I have a lot of good success with her eating when she sits on my lap, and it forces me to sit down and be present with her, which is something I'm not the best at. I want to be cleaning up and doing all the things. We have a little table and chairs that she will sit at, and she really likes that because she feels like a big girl. Sometimes we eat outside if the weather is nice, either at a table or we have a picnic. Like, you can do lots of things that are still appropriate, and you're still teaching your children manners and how to eat, because you're not putting them in front of the TV and you're not letting them walk around the house just eating aimlessly and like putting sticky fingers everywhere, but you are helping them have a different scenery, which is what would be the case if they went to somebody else's house or they went to a restaurant. And I think it does kind of spice it up a little bit. It keeps them interested. It makes them feel like they're part of something, which is really important, and like she's a big girl, you know? Number 5 is to model by example. So we hear all the time to be a good role model for your child, but with food, it is so true. So what I would say, if there are foods that you do not want your children to eat, then don't have them in the house. Don't eat them in front of your kids. They're probably not good for you either. So if you don't want your kids eating Doritos or chocolate bars or whatever, you probably shouldn't be eating those either. There's that element. Or you have to be super like sneaky, which I don't really like, about not eating foods in front of them so that they don't want them. But more importantly, what is probably healthier is to really educate them on how we engage with these treat foods. As I said earlier, I like to talk about foods making us big and strong and being better for us versus good and bad foods. I think people fall into traps, and even as adults, in your head, you're categorizing that's a good food and that's a bad food. And that is a really, really dangerous trap to go down. We spoke a little bit about eating disorders, but there's all these things that can happen. With kids, you know, you want to be educating them on choices around food, and you want to be using those kind of treat foods exactly like that. Like, this is something that I would say tickles our taste buds, tastes really good, but it doesn't always agree with our tummies, and it might not make us feel the best. And obviously when you have a really pre-language or pre-verbal type of child, still a toddler who's not speaking a language, and you can communicate in the way you would with an older child, you adapt and you talk to them in the way that they will understand. But it's the same kind of concept. When I sit down, as I said, with my toddler on my lap and I have my food in front of me, she takes my fork and she eats all of my food. In fact, just today, I made 2 boiled eggs for myself and she ate most of them with a fork. She loved the idea of being independent, and we were outside. She was standing. She wasn't constrained. She knew this food was for me. It was on a plate that was for me. It wasn't on a kiddie plate or anything like that. And we shared. Well, she took most of them, let's be honest, and she loved it. And she ate 2 eggs, or 1.5 eggs, which was really, really impressive. And then I sat down probably a few hours later and I had a meal that was for me, kind of like an oatmeal type of thing. She ate all of that as well, not all of it, but a lot of it. And so it just shows me that by modeling what I'm eating, and being like, having no expectations around it, she was really interested. I didn't have to force her at all, and everybody had a good time. Number 6 is to not restrict foods. So I touched on this a little bit before. I don't want to demonize foods. I don't think that is important. I don't think that is the right strategy. I think we speak about foods, especially with my older child, but you can start this from 3 years old, 2, 3 years old even, talking about foods that make us big and strong, that make our brains grow. Just like how I would speak to them about sleep and how important sleep is. It makes us grow. The same with food. It is clinically proven that there are certain foods that contain vitamins and minerals and special nutrients that help us grow and develop as people. And educating children around food health is super critical to combating this obesity epidemic that we're in, to just kind of combating all the fast processed food that we are bombarded with every day. And I don't demonize the food that they might want, like the candy or the ice cream or anything. It's fine to have those things every now and again. We talk about how to manage that. So I always like them to have a proper meal and then to have like a little treat afterwards, because that will just not spike their blood sugar so much and all this kind of thing. So I think it's really important that we talk about food being in the positive, and then we can also educate on the food that we would prefer them not to eat every day. Else to remember is that kids require different components or macronutrients to adults. So you as a grown-up might feel like you're overindulging in the carbs, in the refined white carbohydrates, and you don't want to eat pizza and pasta and bagels and all these kinds of things. And that's true, we shouldn't overindulge in that. But kids do need more carbohydrate proportionately than adults, because they are burning up those calories so quickly and their metabolisms are really, burning on high levels. It doesn't mean that they should be overindulging either. And every child will have a different body type, will have a different energy level, will have a different way that they metabolize food. But know that your kids can have a more carbohydrate heavy diet as long as they are still getting in those healthy fats and essential proteins to help them grow. And finally, I will leave you with this food for thought. Bada bing. Did you enjoy salad as a kid? Ask yourself, did you like things that were green as a child? For the majority of us, we were probably a little suspect of that lettuce leaf or that basil garnish, as ridiculous as it sounds now and as inert as those things really are. But what I want to leave you with is that if your child is not eating every type of vegetable, or doesn't want to try the peppers or the cucumber, or is removing the parsley garnish from the scrambled eggs, it's not going to be like that forever. Continue to model what you want to see in them. Know that their palates and taste buds evolve over time, and that as you educate them around food, they will likely want to try new things a lot more. For some reason, I'll give you a little example. My son decided that he liked chives in scrambled eggs. And it's very specific, and I think it's because we went to a restaurant once and there were some chives, and for some reason he tried them. I think that's what happened. And interestingly enough, he now wants chives on his scrambled eggs, which is a very random thing, a very green thing. And if you have little kids, you know that they are very suspicious of green things. Even teeny little pieces of basil they will remove from everything. Every child is different. Keep an open mind. Keep having this honest conversation with them. Don't force feed them or make food this opportunity to argue or fight over, and it will all work itself out. So my question, what about you? What is your relationship with food like? With a lot of my clients, I will ask this question as my number one thing when it comes to talking about toddler feeding and food. What is your relationship with food like? Because that might give you a lot of insight into what you're projecting onto your child. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and click that little notification bell. Let me know what other videos you would like me to create. Have a look at some of the videos that we have posted so far that will complement this video. I hope you get a lot of value from this channel. I can't wait to see you in my next video. And remember, mama, you got this.